Welcome back to Scholastic Haiku, the game where knowledge rules. I am your guest host, Sabrina Holkrew. And let's get into our teams. On the bottom, we have Johnston City with Gavin, Ava, Max, and Chase back again. And on the top, we have back again Fortitude with Ezekiel, Blake, Andrew, and Jacob. All right, guys, so once again, before we get into our questions, we're going to go over our rules. So I'm going to ask you guys a series of toss-up questions. If you get it right, you'll get a bonus question. If you get that bonus question wrong, the other team has a chance to steal. You can interrupt me at any time, but if you interrupt and get the question wrong, it's 5 points to the other team. So do your best, and let's do this. All right, our first toss-up question. What author of the 1638 book Discourses on Two New Sciences supposedly dropped 2 balls from the Leaning Tower of Pisa?
Who is Galileo?
That is correct. Fortitude, your verse bonus question. An English governess believes that malevolent ghosts are haunting children named Miles and Flora in what 1898 novella by Henry James?
Unruly Children.
That is incorrect. Johnston City, a chance to steal.
The Turn of the Screw.
That is correct. For our next toss-up, what monarch put down a Cossack rebellion led by Yamelan Pugachev, took the throne after Peter III's death, and was an empress known as the Great?
Who is Catherine?
That is correct. For your bonus, pencil and paper ready. What is the slope of a line whose equation has the form x equals a constant?
It is
0.
That is incorrect. Johnston City, a chance to steal.
Constant.
That is that, will we accept that?
Constant.
That is incorrect. We were looking for undefined or an infinite slope. Infinite. All right, our next toss-up question. What woman who founded the Roots and Shoots program conducted research in Gombe Stream National Park where she observed chimpanzees using tools?
Who is Jane Goodall?
That is correct. Fortitude, your bonus question is what member of the first triumvirate lost the Battle of Pharsalus to Julius Caesar, after which he fled to Egypt, where he was assassinated?
Mark Antony.
That is incorrect. Johnston City, a chance to steal.
Pompeii.
That is correct. On to our next toss-up. What novel in which venomous yellow-spotted lizards inhabit Camp Green Lake?
Holes.
That is correct. A very good book. I remember I was terrified of those lizards. For your bonus, Sydney is the capital of what most populous Australian state, which lies north of Victoria?
New South Wales.
That is correct. Our next toss-up, pencils and paper ready. How many significant digits are there in the number 0.00789, given that the leading zeros?
3.
That is correct. All right, Fortitude, your bonus question is what piece of laboratory glassware has conical body that narrows to a cylindrical neck, making it ideal for swirling its contents during titration?
Beaker.
That is incorrect. Johnston City, a chance to steal.
Pipette.
That is also incorrect. We're looking for an Erlenmeyer flask. Our next toss-up. What state in which a monument known as its Guidestones was bombed in 2022 is represented in the Senate by John Ossoff and is governed from Atlanta?
What's Georgia?
That is correct. For your bonus question, in 1892, James B. Weaver was the presidential candidate of what agrarian third party that supported bimetallism in the regulation of railroads?
Defer to Blake.
Was the Populist Party?
That is correct. Our next toss-up, what sculptor included Fugitive Love of Paolo and Francesca among...
Rodin.
That is correct. Johnston City, your bonus question is Ambrose Pierce defined love as a temporary insanity curable by marriage in what satirical work of lexicography?
Pass.
Fortitude, you have a chance to steal.
A Modest Proposal.
That is incorrect. The answer we were looking for was the Devil's Dictionary. A modest proposal is very good though. Our next toss-up. In humans, what structures can have their function reduced by dosage compensation, can form bar bodies, and cannot recombine with the smaller y?
What's a chromosome?
That is incorrect. That's all the time we have. We weren't looking for just any chromosome, but a sex chromosome or an X chromosome. Our next toss-up question, what president whose wife was nicknamed Lemonade Lucy after he banned
Buzz.
alcohol?
Harding.
That is incorrect. What president whose wife was nicknamed Lemonade Lucy after he banned alcohol at the White House won the disputed 1876 election over Samuel Tilden?
Grant.
That is also incorrect. We were looking for Rutherford Hayes. Rutherford Hayes. Our next toss-up. What author wrote about the Porteous riots in his novel The Heart of Midlothian and described the Saxon knights who served King Richard I in Ivanhoe?
Scott.
That is correct. For your bonus question, what highly active volcano in Hawaii, whose crater is considered sacred by native Hawaiians, has erupted twice in 2023?
Kilauea.
That is also correct. Our next toss-up, what ballet, including an Arabian dance and Waltz of the Flowers, has its dancers portray Clara?
The Nutcracker.
That is correct. All right, John City, your next bonus. Over 1 week in August 1877, Astaff Hall discovered what 2 natural satellites on Mars? Two answers.
Phobos and Deimos.
Say that again.
Phobos and Deimos.
That is correct. All right, our next toss-up. What operation in which Brigade 2506 was defeated after landing at the Playa Giron was a botched CIA-backed attempt to topple Fidel Castro?
Bay of Pigs.
That is correct. For your bonus, what former salesman is pelted with apples by his angry father after turning into a monstrous vermin in Franz Kafka's novella, The Metamorphosis?
Fred.
That is incorrect. Johnson City, a chance to steal.
Samsa.
That is correct. Gregor Samsa. Our next toss-up, what organization which briefly controlled Rostov-on-Don during a 2023 mutiny led by Yevgeny Prigozhin?
What is the Wagner Group?
That is correct. All right, Fortitude, for your bonus question. In November 2022, Anwar Ibrahim became prime minister of what Asian country whose monarchy rotates among the rulers of states like Pahang and Johor?
Mongolia.
That is incorrect. Johnston City, a chance to steal.
Indonesia.
That is also incorrect. We were looking for Malaysia. Our next toss-up, what 9-letter word can mean a combination of functions like g of f of x, can also mean numbers such as 12 and 21 that are products of primes?
What's composite?
That is correct. All right, Fortitude, your bonus question is what British industrialist who founded the Diamond Party De Beers led the Cape Colony in South Africa and funded a namesake scholarship to Oxford?
Cook.
That is incorrect. Johnson City?
Rhodes.
That is correct. Cecil John Rhodes Scholarship. Our next toss-up, what country was the site of the Bataan Death March and the 1986?
Philippines.
That is correct. Fortitude, your bonus question is what Shakespeare comedy centers on Antipholus and Dromio, who discover they both have long-lost twins, also named Antipholus and Dromio?
I did that play.
The Brothers of Verona.
That is incorrect. Johnson City.
Comedy of Errors.
That is correct. A show that I got to be in high school. Our next toss-up question, what organization, which was founded by William D. Boyce and inspired by Robert Baden-Powell, uses a merit badge system and teaches outdoor skills?
The Boy Scouts.
That is correct. For your next bonus question, what Germanic artist included an anamorphic skull and a depiction of two visitors to the court of Henry VIII in his 1533 painting, The Ambassadors?
Vermeer.
That is incorrect, Johnson City.
Hans Holbein the Younger.
That is correct. Our next toss-up question, once again, pencil and paper ready. How many values are in a data set if the arithmetic mean of the set is 12 and the values in the set have a sum of 48?
What are 4?
That is correct. All right, for your bonus question, the word disaster comes from a Latin word for what objects, which can be referred to with the adjective sidereal.
Flowers.
That is incorrect. Johnson City, a chance to steal. That's all the time we have. We were looking for stars. Stars. Our next toss-up. What play in which a fountain pen is stolen by the protagonist's son, Biff, tells the story of suicidal...
Death of a Salesman.
That is correct. All right, John, study here for your bonus. What British lieutenant sailed with Captain George Vancouver, mapped the Pacific Northwest, and lent his name to a sound in Washington state?
Puget.
Yes, Peter Puget, the Puget Sound, correct. Our next toss-up, what office in the Roman Catholic Church may be permanent or transitional, ranks below a priest, and assists with Mass and other services?
Deacon.
That is correct. All right, John City, your next bonus. Once again, pencil and paper ready. Lots of math questions today. What is the 10th triangular number, given that it must be equal to the sum of the first 10 positive integers?
$55.
That is correct. All right, and with that correct question, we will take it to our lightning round. So our scores right now, we have Johnston City leading with 225 and Fortitude following with 130. So our lightning round might break this. Okay, we have the choices. Fortitude, you will get to go first since you are trailing. We have the Atlantic slave trade, the Arabian Sea, agencies and departments, and events by month.
Agencies and departments.
All right, once again, you guys will have a minute to answer as many as you can, and you can pass, and we'll circle back if we have time. Are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what you're doing first. What federal cabinet level departments oversees these U.S. agencies and organizations? Sorry, again, 3, 2, 1. Internal Revenue Service.
Federal Reserve.
That is incorrect. Federal Aviation Administration.
Department of Defense.
That is also incorrect. Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Department of Defense.
That is incorrect. Census Bureau.
Pass.
Secret Service.
Department of Homeland Security.
That is correct. National Indian Gaming Commission.
Pass.
Los Alamos National Laboratory.
Pass.
Food and Drug Administration.
Department of Agriculture.
That is incorrect. The Fulbright Scholarship Program.
Department of Education.
That is incorrect. National Cemetery Administration.
Pass.
The Census Bureau.
Department of Homeland Security.
That is incorrect. Secret Services.
Department of Homeland Security.
That is correct. National Indian... All right, that's all the time we have, so we'll go over the ones you got wrong. So we have the Internal Revenue Services was the Department of Treasury. Federal Aviation Administration was the Department of Transportation. Federal Bureau of Investigation was the Department of Justice. Census Bureau was the Department of Commerce. National Indian Gaming Commission was the Department of Interior. Los Alamos National Laboratory was Department of Energy. Food and Drug Administration was Department of Health and Human Services. The Fulbright Scholarship Program was the Department of State, and the National Cemetery Administration was Department of Veterans Affairs. Very good job, guys. Those were hard ones. Okay, now to our remaining categories. We have the Atlantic slave trade, the Arabian Sea, or events by month.
Events by month.
All right, and I will actually tell you what you're doing this time. Give the month in which these events are scheduled to take place in 2024. Answers may repeat. All right, you guys ready? I'll count you down in 3, 2, 1. Memorial Day.
May.
That is correct. The vernal equinox, or first day of spring in the northern hemisphere.
March.
That is correct. Super Bowl 58.
January.
That is incorrect. The U.S. presidential election.
November.
That is correct. Most recently established U.S. federal holiday.
June.
That is correct. Canadian Thanksgiving.
October.
That is correct. The end of the Tour de France and the start of the Paris Olympics.
June.
That is incorrect. Patriots Day.
September.
That is incorrect. Boxing Day.
December.
That is correct. Eid ul-Fitr, marking the end of Ramadan.
March.
That is also incorrect. And those are all of the questions we have. I don't think you guys passed any. All right, so we'll go over the ones you got wrong. The Super Bowl 58 is in February. The end of the Tour de France and the start of Paris Olympics is July. Patriots Day is April. Boxing Day is December. I think you guys got that right. And the marking of the end of Ramadan is April. All right, good job, guys. So we'll check our scores after that lightning round. Johnston City is still in the lead with 285, and we have Fortitude following with 140. All right, let's get back into our toss-ups. Pencil and paper ready. More math. What value of x satisfies the equation 3 raised to the x power equals 9 raised to the third power, given 9 equals 3 squared?
9.
That is incorrect.
6.
That is correct. All right, John City, your bonus question. What 1959 jazz piece, the best-selling jazz single of all time, was written by Paul Desmond and has a title reflecting its unusual time signature? All right, Fortitude, you have a chance to steal.
Defer to Andrew.
Take 5.
That is correct. Take 5 for the song written in 5/4 time. All right, our next toss-up. What country is home to Durman, was Africa's largest area until 2011 and contains the confluence?
Sudan.
That is correct. All right, Johnson City, your bonus question. What alliteratively named Confederate general who lost at Chattanooga was formerly the namesake of Fort Liberty, a large army base in North Carolina? Are you all out of time, Fortitude, a chance to
Bragg.
steal? That is correct, Braxton Bragg. Our next toss-up question, what 19th century poet wrote about huddled masses yearning to breathe free in a poem written for the Statue of Liberty titled The New Colossus?
Emma Lazarus.
That is correct. For your next bonus question, a 2022 paper proposed that the fossil Tyloephus wellsi had a radula and thus belonged to what largest marine phylum, which also includes cephalopods?
Crustaceans.
That is incorrect. Johnson City?
Mollusks.
That is correct. Our next toss-up question, what metal whose ores include chalcolite forms greenish patina called verdigris and is alloyed with tin in bronze and with zinc in brass?
Copper.
That is correct. For your bonus question, the Jacob's ladder plant belongs to what large family of plants that includes vanilla and is named for a notoriously difficult to cultivate plant?
Orchid.
That is correct. Our next toss-up, what city where 21 people died when a flood of molasses swept its North End neighborhood?
Boston.
Correct. A very Canadian thing, one would say. For your bonus, the DeVos family owns the Eastern Conference NBA team, which was the first professional team for which Shaquille O'Neal played.
Magic.
That is correct. Orlando Magic. Our next toss-up. What composer is known for the Viola Symphony, Harold in Italy, as well as a 5-movement work depicting a witch's Sabbath?
Berlioz.
That is correct. For your bonus, the provisions of Oxford were signed by which English king who fought Simon de Montfort in the Second Barons' War and was the son of King John?
George the First.
That is incorrect. Fortitude, a chance to steal.
Richard the Lionheart.
That is also incorrect. We're looking for Henry III. Henry III. So many Henrys, so many Georges. Our next toss-up, what poet wrote 5 years have passed in Tintern Abbey and collaborated on lyrical ballads with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a fellow British romantic?
Wordsworth.
That is correct. Johnston City, your bonus question is, what island country in the Atlantic forms the Lucayan archipelago along with the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Cape Verde.
That is incorrect. Fortitude, a chance to steal.
Virgin Islands.
That is also incorrect. We're looking for the Bahamas, a place that I would love to visit, the Bahamas. Our next toss-up, what island, which is home to Montauk Point State Park, the Hamptons, and the borough of Brooklyn?
Long Island.
That is correct. All right, for your bonus question, what 2-word Latin phrase is used to indicate that an economic figure, such as a GDP, has been divided by population?
Pass.
Fortitude, chance to steal.
Per capita.
That is correct. Our next toss-up, like the smaller red animal, what member of family Ursidae has a false thumb and can consume 10 kilograms per day of its main food, bamboo?
Panda.
Panda is correct. Your bonus question, Johnston City, is what physical quantity, which has units of distance squared times mass, is the rotational analog of mass?
Angular momentum.
Will we accept that? The judges are deliberating. Repeat the answer?
Angular momentum.
No, that is incorrect. I'm sorry.
Moment of inertia.
That is correct. We're looking for inertia, moment of inertia, or angular inertia. Our next toss-up, what governmental post, which was removed as a cabinet-level role in 1971, was first held in 1775 by Benjamin Franklin and oversees mail delivery?
Postmaster General.
That is correct. Johnston City, for your bonus, what deity, whose name precedes the word Fatagan, in a cultist chant, is a fearsome octopus-like entity whose call titles a story by H.P. Lovecraft?
Cthulhu.
That is correct. For our next toss-up, in what musical, for which Hugh Jackman earned a 2022 Tony nomination, are citizens of River City led by Harold Hill in singing 76 trombones?
Our town.
That is incorrect.
The Music Man.
That is correct. All right, Johnston City, your bonus question. Which city, which was called Stabruic, before being renamed after a British monarch, is the capital of Guyana?
Georgetown.
That is correct. All right, our next. Oh, I'm sorry. That is all the time we have on this episode of Scholastic IQ. So now we'll take a look at our scores. All right, our final score, we do have Johnston City still in the lead with 475, Fortitude following with 190. Good job, guys. Good game. And on behalf of everyone behind the camera, I'm Sabrina Holgrew. Thank you and have a good night.